Welcome into a Tuesday, December 30th edition of Daily Faceoff Live. Tyler Yaremchuk and Carter Hutton with you. The show, as always, streaming on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. Looking for your inbox questions either for us or for our guest today, who will be Stephen Ellis, joining us live from Minnesota for the 2026 World Juniors. The show, as always, a presentation of Bet365 as well. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Carter Hutton. No, you got a nice little tease for a topic we're getting to later, maybe with the Nick Suzuki on the background.
I didn't want to leak it too early, but it happens. It's happening everywhere. The leaks are out. And honestly, how is it December 30th, by the way? I don't know if this is just me showing my age, being 40 now, but like, where the heck did the year go? It's crazy that we're already here and knocking on 2026's door here.
Yeah, we're a couple of days away, actually, from teams officially starting to reach the halfway point of the NHL season. So we'll definitely do some stuff about that, some halfway report cards when we flip the calendar to 2026. But like I said, some World Junior talk coming up in a few minutes, a little bit of Olympic roster talk ahead of tomorrow and Team Canada's announcement of their Olympic roster. But let's start things off with a team that is, just kind of sputtering along. It was another tough loss last night for the Winnipeg Jets, who went into their game against the Edmonton Oilers, losers of 5 in a row, with all of them being one-goal game Huts. And last night, I guess an empty netter makes it not technically a one-goal loss for the Winnipeg Jets, but for all intents and purposes, it is a one-goal loss for the Winnipeg Jets. They are struggling right now. I think a lot of people expected that, hey, once Connor Hellebuyck gets into the lineup and they get him back, they'll be able to, no pun intended, turn on the Jets and get this thing back on track. They're now 1-3-3 since their MVP goalie returned to the lineup. How concerned are you about the struggles in Winnipeg?
I'm really concerned, honestly. I feel like I was one of those people getting in line. It's like, hey, let's manage this Eric Comrie run without Connor Hellebuyck. He's going to come back. It's going to be in a shot in the arm. He's going to play well. He's going to keep you in games. And he hasn't been horrible, right? He still has a .908 save percentage. He's, been strong. I guess like there's teams that would line up to try to get an average .908 save percentage in their roster and their goaltending depth. But that being said, there's just no depth to this lineup when you think about offensively, right? You still have the same victims all the time. Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, they each have 18 goals. Then it's Velarde with 16. And then after that, other than Morrissey, it drops right off. It's 15 for Niederreiter. Iafallo. They just don't have any depth. And I think the whole Jonathan Taves experiment at 2C for as long as it was there, it just hasn't worked. And I think that is where this team is at. And now you look at a Central Division that is absolutely star-studded. Sitting here on December 30th, they are 20 points behind the Minnesota Wild for third in the division. That is overwhelming in my mind to where they're at. Like, I still think there is the fact of the matter, you can catch Utah, you can get where they're at, but I think this has been a thoroughly disappointing season so far when you look at the Winnipeg Jets standard and what we got from them last year, Ty.
If they were to win all of their games in hand on Minnesota, they're still 20 points back of that team. Like, it's starting to get to a point where, like, they're obviously not catching one of those big three. They're all locked in. Like, that point differential halfway through the season, it's way too much for anyone to overcome. It's too much for Utah to overcome, and they're 5 points ahead of the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, their sights now need to be focused on trying to become a wild card team. And listen, again, the games in hand are nice, but they're only worth anything if you actually go out and win them. And the way this Jets team is rolling right now, I don't see much of a reason to believe that they can win them. And you're right, it's goal scoring, man. Like, if the big dogs aren't going, which granted, hey, they were on Saturday against the Minnesota Wild. You had a goal from Scheifele and a goal from Kyle Connor that you thought was going to propel you to victory. But just to look at these numbers a little bit, when Hellebuyck was out of the lineup, they were only averaging 2.67 goals per game. It was 23rd in the league over that stretch. Since Hellebuyck has returned, and this excludes last night, which would actually drop the number a little bit, but going into last night's game, they were only averaging 2.5 goals per game with Hellebuyck back in the lineup. So again, Hellebuyck returns, and it's like, great, you dropped the goals against part of your game back down to the elite level that it's usually at, but the goal scoring fell too. Like, I don't know, maybe Kevin Cheveldayoff can do something, but when you look at how good this division is it even worth Kevin Cheveldayoff going out and making a big trade to try boost this team? Because what are you going to get to the playoffs and get smoked by Colorado in round one?
You know what's concerning for me too is when you look at this roster, right? And again, this has always been that topic of like nobody wants to play in Winnipeg, but now you have guys that are committed to
Yeah.
being in Winnipeg, and these are some good players. But that being said, Mark Scheifele's 32 years old now. Kyle Connor's 29. You have Adam Lowry locked up at 32. Like these guys are getting older too, so it does feel like this window is going to start to shrink. And then again, the fact of how many more miles can you put on Connor Hellebuyck being that high 50, 60 game goalie and expect him to be good and carry the load? Because that's just going to start to deteriorate, because that's just what happens with time and with goaltending, with hockey in general. So it is concerning when you look at the fact of what they were able to do last year with their regular season, winning the President's Trophy, you know, and getting to the second round and obviously running into Dallas. Now it feels like it's trending in the wrong direction. And when I look at this roster, I don't really see this leak being stopped by anyone in this depth of this team.
Elias is in. He says, I'm a chronic optimist. He's a Jets fan, presumably, but he goes, season is over for the Jets. Need to move on from some vets in the middle third, get some picks, including that lottery pick, and start playing the prospects. Focus on next year. Yeah, I mean, at this point last season, so the Jets right now, 34 points in 37 games. Last year, through 37 games, they had 53 points, a 19-point difference year over year, which is just absolutely wild. But we talked about this yesterday with Pagnotta, where like you kind of know who a few of the sellers around the NHL are going to be. A team like Winnipeg, who's sitting there with, you know, a couple of vets on the blue line. You could look up front and, you know, Gustav Nyquist, I suppose, is a piece. But like, I wonder if the Jets don't look at a few of these players they have in the middle parts of their lineup and go, you know what? There's not a lot of sellers. Contenders are going to be paying a lot to get good veteran forwards like this. Maybe we do just sell off a little bit, but I digress on the Jets. They are ice cold right now in I think last night on the broadcast, they kept calling it the icy peg, which I had really never heard before. But again, I'll digress on that front as well. Quickly, need to give love to the Buffalo Sabres. Huts. They won their 9th in a row last night. They're on the opposite end of this spectrum, and they just can't be stopped right now.
9th in a row. It's unbelievable. Alex Lyon, again, that's 7 in a row for him. They've been good. They beat my former team in the St. Louis Blues. And you know what? I will tell you, Ty, we talked about this yesterday a bit. I was there for a 10-game winning streak. It changes the whole mentality of the fan base. I remember we probably jumped the gun a little bit. I think they were planning the parade, but this is a good thing for Buffalo. This is a good thing for their fan base. There's a show of life. The team is playing well, and I hope they can continue, because it would be exciting to get a Buffalo Sabres team into the playoffs and break that slump.
Be a lot of fun. Let's play a little big deal or no deal on a few of the other headlines that popped up yesterday around the NHL. We'll start in Carolina, where head coach Rod Brind'Amour says Pyotr Kochetkov is more than likely done for this season. He's getting surgery to correct a lower body issue that has apparently been nagging him all season. The Canes goalies have it's always been the book on him and Anderson that they cannot find a way to stay healthy for a full season. Big deal or no deal for the Canes cup hopes, losing Kochetkov for the year?
I'm going to just err on the side of big deal here a little bit. I don't know if it is. It's somewhere in the middle in my mind, because Bussy has been unbelievable. He's 13-1-1. He won again. But like, is this his like coming out party? Is this his Jordan Binnington run? Is this that run where we saw Cam Ward? Cam Ward was a lot younger than Brandon Bussy, but there's a good chance. Because when I think about Freddie Anderson, that is concerning. I think an elite Freddie Anderson's healthy. He can get the job done, carry it. But like, just like the Winnipeg Jets are now the Toronto Maple Leafs of the Western Conference, Freddie Anderson is a guy that just can't get it done in the playoffs. He can't stay healthy. So I do think it is concerning, but right now they look very intelligent, having 3 goalies. But is Brandon Bussy the guy? Like when you look in that Western Conference, the Eastern Conference, the goalies you're going to run into when you think about Bobrovsky, you think about Vasilevsky, when it comes down to, if you do make an Eastern Conference championship, are you putting Brandon Bussy up against those guys? That is concerning to me.
Yeah, and Freddie Anderson, like Pat just flashed up the numbers there. It's worth noting Freddie Anderson's having a putrid season. And again,
Yes.
Injuries are a part of it, but like those numbers are just ugly. And it's been bad as of late for him too. He gave up 5 goals his last time out. Like there was a part of me that really wanted to go no big deal, because you have Brandon Bussy, 13-1-1. The numbers, the underlying numbers, everything is just so sparkling good with this guy. But yeah, I think the Canes, if they've learned any lesson over the last number of years, it's that you need depth, and you probably need 3 goalies at some point. Anderson's playing bad. Who knows if the clock will strike midnight at any point with Bussy. I think losing Pyotr Kochetkov is a big deal. How about some players with big smoke getting healthy scratched? There were 3 instances of it over the last 48 hours in the NHL. You have Jake Debrusk in Vancouver, You have Andrew Mangiapane in Edmonton and Sean Monahan in Columbus. Mangiapane's just 39 games into his Oilers career. He's got one more year at $3.6 million. Sean Monahan, 3 more years at $5.5 million. Jake Debrusk has 5 more seasons at $5.5 million. Which one of these three, Huts, do you think is the biggest deal to be sitting on the sidelines?
You know what? For me, I think it's Jake Debrusk. I just think the contract and where he's at, and this is a team where they've been through so much drama in Vancouver. You think back to the JT Miller saga and, bringing him in. And now you've kind of cleaned the shelves out. Guys have been moved out. You're in this mid-grade rebuild, or I'm not sure exactly what's going on in Vancouver. I don't think anybody is. This is a guy who should be in a leadership role, who should be stepping up and playing better. And that's clearly not the case. So again, that is the most concerning one for me. The Mangiapane one is a bit of a head scratcher in the sense of it doesn't seem like they can find anyone to fit. And I think it gets overshadowed by the success that Jack Roslovic had coming in there and playing well and filling in that role. And Sean Monahan, he's bounced around enough where I think Columbus is at that phase where at his age and where he's at, maybe he becomes a piece that comes exposable and you move him in a trade. But for me, it's the Debrusk one that worries me the most.
Yeah, I think that Debrusk one, you're right, just with the number of term. The other thing that, listen, it's today's NHL. This is no surprise and definitely not something that's exclusive to these three guys. But Huts, everyone has a fucking no trade clause. You can't, it's not like Vancouver could just sit there and be like, Jake, we're trading you and getting out of your money and giving you a fresh start. You're going to Buffalo. No, he's a full no move. Sean Monahan, full no move. Andrew Mangiapane has a full 32 or 31 team no trade list. Moving on from these guys, it's a bit of a two-way street. And listen, that's the word in Edmonton, and I can talk on that being close to the situation. His agent has been given full permission to go out and seek a trade somewhere. If he can find someone willing to take his money, I think the Oilers would happily grant his wish at this point and get the salary moved out. But this also got me thinking a little bit of is there maybe a problem for problem swap somewhere in here? I think, a guy like Sean Monahan definitely has more trade value than an Andrew Mangiapane. But if Columbus and Edmonton could find a way to make this money work somehow, Edmonton's desperate for some help down the middle. Adam Henrique's a shell of his former self. Jake Debrusk has a ton of ties to Edmonton. He's from the area, played his minor hockey here. Maybe there is some sort of a problem for problem swap out there between these teams where, again, Monahan started his career in Alberta. He would probably put his hand up and say, yeah, sure, I'll waive to go back up there and chase a Stanley Cup with the Oilers. I wonder if there's not maybe some connection between these three somewhere down the line.
And we've seen that happen before too, which I think is a good point. It's not like there's no tread left on the tire on these players too. It's the fact that it could be a change of scenery. It could be a shot in the arm. It could be just the situation that you're in. And we've seen it so many times where guys bet on themselves. And again, I think back to some of the experience I had in my 3 years in Buffalo, guys not producing there and then getting into a different situation and playing well in a better role, in a spotlight. And again, a guy for me that I always circle back. It's easy to put out the Jack Eichels and Sam Reinharts because they're world-class players, but an Evan Rodriguez sort of player, he gets out of Buffalo, he gets in a different role, and he's been so successful for the Florida Panthers during the run. I think a Debrusk, I think a Monahan still could go into a situation and be a difference maker on both sides of the puck wherever they end up. So it will be interesting to watch how that plays out because that is a lot of money to just be sitting in the press box, Ty.
Tons of smoke to be sitting up eating popcorn in a suit. We are going to be joined by Stephen Ellis in a minute here. I know we're running a little bit long as we usually do, but tomorrow is the big announcement for Team Canada and their Olympic roster. It's going to happen right at noon Eastern, so we're going to be doing a live reaction show here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. You won't want to miss that, but ahead of tomorrow's announcement, Huts, each of us made our list. 3 big things we are curious about watching for when this roster gets announced. I will give you the floor first. What are the 3 big things to look for on this roster?
Well, obviously goalies, because I'm a goalie. I love goaltending, but it is actually the highlight when you look at Team Canada. Team Canada is the team where what the heck are they going to do in net, right? I think Jordan Binnington gets in there based on, body of work and what he's done at the international level and in big games. And then from there, it's a crapshoot, right? You look back to last year, Sam Montembeault is now in the American League on a conditioning stint. Aiden Hill's been hurt. So in that category, I do think we're going to see Logan Thompson, rightfully so. I think he should have been there in the Four Nations Cup. He will be there now. And now for that third spot, there's a lot of argument, different sides. I truthfully think it's going to be Mackenzie Blackwood because he is the elite guy and he is the guy that can go there and be a difference maker. So it's going to be a dogfight, going to be interesting. My next topic that I wrote down is as they're trying to build this team is going to be based off of skill versus adaptability. And what I mean by that is yes, there's a ton of skill, but now you're going to take them out of roles where they're playing 20 minutes or certain situations where they are the first guy over the wall. And now can you be that bottom six forward versus a player that's already in that role? And again, I know we've had Jeff Merrick on a lot talking about Team Canada really wanting to have that, skill is going to adapt. And I think that's going to be interesting to see how they build out this as a team. It's different to have the best players on paper, but how do they build this as a team? And my last point was coaches' picks. The trustworthy guys that John Cooper has in a Sorelli, in a player, Braden Point. He has those relationships, and now he has those relationships from the players from the Four Nation. That goes along with all the other head coaches he's dealing with, and Doug Armstrong. So it will be interesting to see if they wipe the slate clean or there is a little bit of recency bias because they've dealt with these players before, Ty.
Yeah, on the goaltending front, I think the only reason I'll disagree with you is because I don't see it as much of a debate. Like, I think it's very easily Logan Thompson's your number one. I bet you Doug Armstrong's going to bring his boy Jordan Binnington still. Like, that doesn't feel like much of a debate for me. I'd be stunned if he's not on the roster. And I think you nailed it with Blackwood. Like, I think it's like ding, ding, ding. Maybe it's Kemper. Maybe it's Blackwood. I've always laughed that, like, in a tournament like this, if you get to your third goalie, you're probably screwed anyways. So, like, just bring whoever the hell you want. It doesn't matter. I know it's not that simple. But I like the skill versus adaptability point. That kind of ties into, like, my first two, where it's the kids up front. Are you bringing both Celebrini and Bedard? That ties directly to too much size. Like, how much size is too much size? Because you want to be big. You want to forecheck hard. You want to do all of these things. We also have seen at the World Juniors that, hey, sometimes physicality is not a good thing. It can get you in trouble with the way double IHF games are officiated. But, like, Konechny was there at the Four Nations face-off. Do you need all three of Konechny, Sam Bennett, who was also there, and Tom Wilson, who I think a lot of people are starting to view as more of a lock? Like, do you need all three of them? No. Do you need two of them? Do you maybe only need to bring one of them if you're also bringing a Brad Marchand or a Zach Hyman or guys like that who can give you that sort of physicality and forechecking and hard-nosed play? Like, I'm curious to see how much, we'll call it size/grit, because I know even guys like Hagel and Konechny aren't the biggest in stature, even though they play that fast, rugged style of game. So the way they build this forward group ties in perfectly, in my eyes, to what you said with skill versus adaptability. And then for me, it's the blue line. Like, similar conversation. Do you need both Sanheim and Parayko on that blue line if you also have pieces like Taves and Morrissey who can kill penalties for you and things like that? So the blue line will be interesting too, Huts.
Yeah, again, the blue line is the one that's going to highlight for me. And I think a player for me personally watching is going to be the Chychrun one. I think Jacob Chychrun has played his way onto this team. But again, that's maybe the guy that is your extra guy because his defensive skill, that's where it's the Sanheim versus Parayko, where maybe they're can eat up a little bit better minutes in the D zone, where maybe Chychrun gives up a bit defensively what you gain offensively. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I'm looking forward to it. And this is one that no matter what they pick, we're going to judge it on results, but it's always fun this time of year.
Yeah. All right, let's get to our big segment. Keep talking Team Canada World Juniors edition, though. Our big segment's brought to you by Uber Eats, enabling fans to maximize their fandom all season long with exclusive game day deals on the app. Whether it's game day eats or all the ingredients you need to make your go-to game day dip, Uber Eats is assisting every fan's hockey experience all season long. Stephen Ellis joins us live from Minnesota, boots on the ground, covering the World Junior Hockey Championships for us at dailyfaceoff.com. Mr. Ellis, yesterday was a hell of a day for you at the tournament. I just mean hell of a day because of how entertaining things were. Your reaction to the Adam Yaremchuk OT winner, which I think it's an all-timer.
That was the one game I didn't see a single second of in person, but watching it online, my God, that was incredible. Like, you look at yesterday, you start the tournament with a terrible first game, an uncompetitive final game, and the two in between were fantastic. So Yaremchuk's been, in my opinion, the best player of this entire tournament. You look at that Czech blue line, I mentioned in our tournament preview, that was going to be a real strength of that team, and Yaremchuk has just played at a completely different level than I think we expected. So heck of a game. That was wild. It was looking kind of slow for a little bit when the Czechs were dominating in that first period and Finland only had 4 shots, but that's a gutsy team. That was a gutsy effort. And again, I think it was funny in being in the press room for the USA game about to happen. And everyone's just like, whoa, what just happened? I know a few people left that game early to come to the USA game. We're pretty upset.
Again, Finland, like Hutton and I talked to Little World Juniors yesterday on the show, and I kind of talked about how, Canada barely squeaks by Latvia, and maybe you weren't as enamored with them through 2 games as maybe some Canadian fans were hoping. And then you had USA yesterday getting pushed by Slovakia. Like, all the big dogs, it feels like, have had some amount of flaws to their game. But when you look at, we'll call it USA, Sweden, Canada, Finland, can include Czechia in there, like, which big dog in this tournament has been most impressive through 2 or 3 games?
Ooh, that's a really tough one, actually. I'm in a sense, I'm gonna go with Czechia, and I think that's partly because goaltending hasn't been a huge strength of theirs, but they were able to get the job done yesterday. Michael Orsolak looked really good, and that's a group that just doesn't have a ton of high-end talent. I think with them, they're going out there and beating everybody through just the fact that they got 4 lines that could really battle. And you got Wojciech Chihar, who's been really good. Thomas Galvis is playing like Lane Hudson out there. You look at Peter Sakura, the Washington Capitals prospect. He's been good. Vaclav Nestrasol, he's been outstanding. He's 6'6" and he's hard to miss out there, especially with taking pictures of warm-ups, like going up close with them. He's huge. So I think the fact that they can just kind of roll all their lines and be very successful, that has been very important for them.
You know what? Honestly, I agree. I think some of these matchups have been like, you're getting a team tired maybe, or, because they are playing back to back. And last night we got to see a little bit of Canada's depth with Keaton Verhoff getting in there. What did you think of his game and where he's at? Because he has been a big prospect. That's been a lot of talk about the NHL draft coming up.
I thought Verhoff looked really good, actually. I think with him, it's difficult to spend well over a week of not playing any game action, and he's actually kind of used to that in college, where you'll take 4 or 5 days off and you play a couple games on the weekend and that's it. But for him, I thought he looked really good. He was a little bit more shaky at the start of that game as he was just trying to find his feet. But by the middle part of that game, he was arguably Canada's best defenseman. He played a lot more than we saw out of some of their other guys that were playing more depth roles in this tournament. And it'll be interesting to kind of see how they decide to keep him around right now. Are they going to let him keep playing? Are they going to maybe put Carson Karls and see if he can get his momentum back after a really good pre-tournament? But either way, I think they're in a good situation here where, yeah, Canada's defense has probably been the weakest part of their team, but I think they really bounced back yesterday. Sure, it was against Denmark, but you were just seeing a lot smarter passes, like those plays that even under pressure, it doesn't really matter what the competition is. They were just giving away the puck, being lazy. Any team was going to take advantage of that. Even when the Danes were really attacking early, I thought that the Canadian defense really showed some promise there. So it's going to be a bit more difficult, I think, for Verhoff to really kind of get that ice time, but I really liked where his game was.
Yeah, which is reassuring, I think, for a team to know you have depth and you need to defend. Now my next where I'm going to swing is to the goalies, right? Because Carter George, I didn't think showed well in the first game against Czechia, but they gave up a lot of high-quality chances. Then I thought Ivan Kovic was good in that Latvia game. And then last night, back to George, do you think it's his net moving forward? Because now the next game is against the Finns, and it's like you have to get him going to, propel them into the medal round?
Because there was the day between those 2 games, between Denmark and Finland, it made a lot of sense that whoever started that game against Denmark was going to be their guy. And it feels like they still trust George. And yeah, that game against Czechia wasn't great. On the other hand, watching back some of those goals, there were, I think, 3 tipped goals. It was one where some of those you couldn't completely blame them. And it's a good Czech team, and Canada's defense was not great. But for me, I know it's not the popular opinion, and you could say otherwise, Carter, but I always like the idea of if a goalie has a bad game, give him the next game. Let him go out there and try to get that momentum back and try to be in the right headspace. You don't want a goalie sitting there 2-3 days, thinking back about that game. And I know of Carter George, he's really mentally strong. He's got Pete Fry as a mentor for him. That's one of the guys that's known for just getting the best out of a goalie's mindset. And I think with Carter George, we saw what he did at this tournament last year. We saw what he's done in the AHL. We saw what he's done in rookie tournaments with the LA Kings. This guy can play in big moments. And sure, that goal against yesterday wasn't great. That was a fluky goal. I think if you do that again, that's not going in. So overall, I think they're going to keep going with him because I know Hockey Canada trusts him. He's been so good at all these events, and he rarely has 2 bad games in a row. So I do like him right now.
Let's move off Canada and talk a little bit about Team USA. Obviously, still doing well, off to a perfect start, 9 points on the tournament. But how about the tournament that Will Zellers is putting together? Not a guy who coming into this thing was expected to be a big driver for the US, but he's been exactly that.
So Zellers wasn't even named to the original camp roster. So they added him late. He was so good in November in college, and it was just like, all right, what type of role are they going to give him? Are they going to give him a 13th forward thing, kind of like, okay, we didn't have you there originally, you weren't part of our plans. We think you're good, but we're going to kind of ease you in. But no, in this case, he's been actually so impressive. He's got 6 points in 3 games. He already has 3 game-winning goals. He's got the game-winning goals in all 3 games for the Americans right now. He's been really good on the power play. I love his speed. I love that he's got a great shot, but he's also going to the net to try and crash the net and create rebounds, and he's picking up some of those rebounds. So I know yesterday that goal went off his foot. Wasn't exactly the most skilled play, but at the same time, talking to a scout when that happened, he puts himself in those situations to be in those scoring lanes, and I like that out of him. So I think huge tournament for a guy that not a lot of people were talking about 2 months ago.
Stephen, I'm stealing a question from the chat here, which I think makes sense. It's like talking about Leon Mugley from Switzerland, about his NHL level shot. And then my second part is like, anybody else on your radar that like has really shown well at this tournament, that has put themselves on the map that you weren't really prepared for?
I think when it comes to Mugli, it's interesting because he missed most of the season due to injury, and it was going to be a question of like how was he going to be eased into this tournament? He had a pretty rough pre-tournament with the Swiss, but he's looked really good the last 2 games, where Switzerland doesn't have a lot of offensive weapons, but Mugli's been one of those guys that's going out there and getting a lot of shots. He's been playing a little bit with Danil Ustinkov, a guy who they've been teammates at the international level for a few years. He actually goes by the nickname of Stinky. So I love that. Not the greatest nickname. But then with Mugli, just the hockey sense is there. So I really like that. In terms of a guy that's really impressing me though right now, Thomas Galvis. And he's undrafted, but he plays a lot like Lane Hudson, like I mentioned earlier, a guy that's out there just buzzing around, creating incredible plays. And Frankie Corrado had a really good breakdown on the broadcast a few days ago, where it's just like, watch what he does. His skating, his hockey sense, all that combined makes him a dominant presence there. So you look at some of the bigger defensemen on that team, Sanika and Radim Murka, but then you go and see a guy like Galvis, who's 5'10", 5'11", and he's out there dominating this tournament. So that's a guy that's been really impressive.
So when we had you on, would have been 6 days ago now, to do our preview ahead of the tournament, you kind of had Canada, you had Sweden, then I think you had Czechia as your number 3. If I could give you a redo anywhere, would you take it, or do you want to lock in your answers one more time?
I'm going to stick with it. I think right now with Sweden, my big concern about that team was their goaltending. Their goaltending's been fantastic. I'd say Luve Herenstam has actually been one of the best goalies in this tournament, maybe a top 10 player overall. Anton Frundell's really good. Hey, at teams, if you're playing against Sweden, just stand in front of Frundell because they keep passing to him. So, the Swedes are a lot of fun to watch. I think they're going to be there. But Canada, I'm still going with them. The big guys needed to perform last night. Again, I know it's against Denmark, but it really seemed like they were playing with a lot more speed and confidence than we had seen from before.
Stephen, appreciate your time. Continue the good coverage down in Minnesota, and we'll probably chat again next week.
Off to Switzerland and Germany. See you guys.
A quieter slate today at the World Juniors, and then obviously tomorrow, New Year's Eve, is always a big day with some big matchups. Let's get to our daily Faceoff inbox question, #askDFO. We were talking about Carter George there, and Stephen kind of said, the one goal he gave up, he maybe didn't love. How difficult is it? Like, through 40 minutes, Huts, he faced 5 shots. How tough is that as a goalie? Do you remember like a game in your career where you're sitting there being like, oh my God, they're not even like coming close to playing in my end of the ice?
Yeah, numerous ones too. And it just goes to show you like the mental side of the game of staying with it, right? It's easy at times. And I had that conversation with you before the show started, right? We're talking about Calvin Pickard last night, and he puts up well, stopping 42. But sometimes those nights where you're getting more shots, it's easier to stay in it. So this is where between the ears is so important, being able to stay in the moment and stay sharp when you don't know when it's coming. So for Carter George, I think he has that. And what we've seen now, I think with a lot of these younger goalies and players in general, is the sports psychology side of the game. They're getting to at a younger age, and they're building up a little more mental fortitude. So it's impressive to say, but I've been in so many games where it's like you're looking at the scoreboard and you've given up 2 and you've had 7 shots, and you're just sitting there like dying to get shots. But as you mature, you start to learn that like you can only control what you can in a hockey game.
We got one in here from Gord, and this is back to the Olympics. He said, with it being such a short tournament, why wouldn't Canada go for the instant chemistry and bring guys like Hyman, Bouchard, even Nugent Hopkins to play with McDavid? And he said, McDavid, Nuge, Hyman, it's an instant first line. I don't think Ryan Nugent Hopkins is quite on that level as a player, as much as I love the Nuge. He got into his, I think, 5th career fight last night as well. I love the Nuge. He's not on that level. Zach Hyman for me is, though. Like, if you're debating between a Zach Hyman or a, and man, like I love Brandon Hagel, but like, what's the gap between a Hyman and a Hagel? Where is that gap made up for with the chemistry side of it? I think it is. Like, I would bring Zach Hyman. I've done this rant before on the show. I'm a little bit on the fence with Bouchard, but like, Hyman should be an Olympian in my eyes.
Yeah, and that goes back to like my coach's pick topic, right? Where it's like there is that familiarity with John Cooper, but then I also think you're at a point now where the way you win the Olympics is by getting Connor McDavid to produce offense. That is going to be a giant separator because he is the best player in the world. And if you can get him into that point where I have more familiarity with a Hyman instead of a Hagel or whoever he ends up with. So I think that needs to be a priority, but that's where I think there is more transparency. And I think that was great of having the 4 nations before this, where you can kind of build that up and see what can we do to get our star players like McDavid, like McKinnon to their game immediately, because that's going to be a huge difference maker.
All right, let's get to our daily bets for Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, I see 2 green check marks, and neither one of them are next to my game. Backlund had 2 shots through 40 minutes, or 2 shots through, I think, 30 minutes of the game, and couldn't get the third. Pat, though, you're coming off a nice win again.
Yeah, I felt pretty good about the 2 young teams getting a bunch of goals. So the overhit, and Buffalo just on a heater right now. So why bet against them? Happy to see another check mark on there with me, though, Huts.
Yeah, Pat and Buffalo just have 2 things in common. They just keep on winning. I'm glad I got a big win last night. I know we didn't really like that under, but Picard showed up well, and Vancouver had a nice comeback for me in the shootout win.
Yeah, the under in Winnipeg, Edmonton was surprising to me, but what do I know? Let's get to our picks for today. I'm keeping it simple. Just give me one. It's the over between Florida and Montreal. The line is set at 6.5. It's looking like this one might be Montembeault versus Tarasov, and I know Tarasov's been decent this year, but that Montreal offense is good. Montembeault has been brutal this season. Florida's starting to pick things up a little bit here. They're playing good hockey. What are the Panthers in their last 10? 7-3-0. So the Panthers are playing good. The offenses on each side are playing well. Simple over here for me. Pat?
Yeah, this Florida-Montreal game is going to be the hot one tonight because I've also got a couple on there. But mine is a Sam Reinhart point and a Yurov Slafkovsky point. I've bet on him in the past, and it worked for me at plus 170. Reinhart has a point in his last 10, and Slafkovsky, he has 10 points in his last 5. Slafkovsky has 8 points in his last 5, so he's hot right now. I think this is going to be the game to watch tonight. Huts, I know you're kind of on the same line as I am here.
Was this the only game on the schedule, boys? I think we all took the same one. I did this on my own. I have a Sam Reinhart point, and I have a Florida money line, too. I guess to pair off of what Pat said, Sam Montembeault, yuck. It's been a tough go. Sam Reinhart, thumbs up. Guy gets points every which way you choose. So Panthers, Reinhart, I'm coming for you, Pat.
All right, let's wrap up the show with a little bit of garbage time. A story from last week is that the Toronto Maple Leafs fired Marc Savard. He was their power play coach. Fired him a couple of days or a day before Christmas. Yesterday, Marc Savard, he hopped on Twitter. He changed the profile picture back to him in a Boston Bruins jersey, which some people took as him trolling the Leafs a little bit. Maybe there were some Christmas spirits involved in that one, because an hour later, he quickly changed it back to just him in a Team Canada t-shirt, but got a good chuckle out of Marc Savard trolling Leafs Nation a little bit yesterday.
Yeah, I love it too. You know, he gets his send-off right before Christmas. And again, I heard that argument before about firing a guy right before Christmas is obviously brutal, but this is the way. It's a big business. You know what you signed up for. But for Marc Savard, it didn't go as planned, but I did love his run in Toronto last year during the playoff on Hockey Night in Canada when they had the savvy meter. Like when they would score a goal and they would judge how much he's celebrating, and Chief would be standing beside him and be like, hey, calm down, buddy. Act like you've been here before.
Yeah, that was good. Also, getting fired before Christmas, obviously that would suck, and these guys are very proud, and Marc Savard has also made a lot of money in his career, but there is something, Huts, about being a coach, whether it's NHL or you read those college football stories where guys get fired with $30 million left on their contracts, and then you hear they're fighting and looking for another job, and I'm like, man, if you guys want to pay me $30 million, Daily Faceoff, whoever's listening, I will sit on a beach the rest of my life gladly.
Yeah, seriously, it's a pretty good deal. And you, like, you know what you signed up for. And I honestly, I remember back to this day, Doug Armstrong having a meeting with guys being like, this is the life you signed up for. So either deal with it or get out, because that's what hockey is.
All right, big day for us here over at the Nation Network. A lot of great interviews. Some of them are out already. Paul Bissonnette was on Morning Cup of Hockey earlier today. Go listen to that. They talked a lot of Buffalo Sabres there. Pete DeBoer from Hockey Canada on Leafs Morning takes some great insight into the Team Canada roster ahead of tomorrow's announcement. And Don Waddell on the sheet. He swung and made another trade, 2 deals this year already for Don Waddell in Columbus. He sent Dmitry Voronkov to the Pittsburgh Penguins for Danton Heinen and a couple of picks. So he's coming up with Jeff Merrick in about exactly half an hour, actually. So keep it locked on the Daily Faceoff YouTube for that interview as well. Everybody in our YouTube chat, great stuff as always. Some good questions, some good conversation in there. Tomorrow, I am going live, noon Eastern, live reaction to the Hockey Canada announcement. Going to be joined by Jason Gregor, possibly even Matt Larkin, and others for the show. So enjoy your Tuesday. We'll see you tomorrow, Wednesday, New Year's Eve, for a big announcement day on the show. Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on the sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.